Hey everyone, Pastor Mike here from Time of Grace Ministry. We've just tackled John chapter 6, and I hope you've been squeezing every drop of Jesus out of each and every word. There are two things that jumped out at me from this long chapter, and the first was in verse 27, where Jesus said, "Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life." And he made the claim that Jesus himself was the bread of life. Have you ever noticed that almost all the stuff we worked for spoils? We work hard to get our boss's approval, and we might get it one day, but then it spoils and we lose it with the next project that doesn't turn out. We might work really hard for our romantic life, to start dating, to fall in love, but sometimes it spoils and the relationship falls apart and we're uncertain about its future. Sometimes we work really hard on our image, the way that we look, the way that we work out, the makeup that we wear, the clothes that we buy, and sometimes people compliment us, and sometimes we don't turn a single head as we walk down the street. It's kind of like the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, that everything is meaningless. You can work so hard for something, and it's like sand that slips through our fingers. And that's why Jesus echoes the words of Isaiah 55. Why work for food that spoils? Why spend your whole life pursuing something that's temporary? Why not instead feast on Jesus, the bread of life, who satisfies always? It kind of reminds us of John chapter 4, where Jesus said to that woman at the well, "I can give you living water, and if you drink of it, you will never be thirsty again." I hope you find out that to have eternal life in Jesus means that you eternally have a friend in Jesus. God eternally approves of you because of Jesus. God always loves you and pursues you. He invites you and he chooses you. He accepts you. All these things that your heart craves, you can find right now through faith in Jesus Christ, and no one can touch it and no one can take it away. And so as you think about today, as you think about this week, don't work for food that spoils. Instead, trust in Jesus, who is the bread that gives eternal life. The second thing I want you to pick up is that Jesus was not convinced that faithfulness equals success. There's something that's kind of infected American church culture, and it's this idea that if we do the right things, if we have the right website or social media plan, if we're really faithful in ministry, if we serve the poor and we teach the truth, and we're not hypocritical, but we live a good life of love, that our churches will grow in number. But by the end of John chapter 6, we realize that's not quite true. Here's Jesus, and he's building a church, and he is full of grace, meaning he never sins against anyone. And he's full of truth, and he has more wisdom than all the church leaders put together. But did you notice what happened by the end of the chapter? Everyone leaves. People say, this is a hard teaching. Who can believe this? Who would want to be a part of this? And these massive crowds of thousands of people leave. In fact, even Jesus' closest disciples, his apostles, are tempted to leave. But they say, Jesus, where are we going to go? You're the one that has eternal life. And I want you to remember that if maybe your ministry isn't successful, if you don't have the biggest church in town, if you're trying to be full of grace and you're trying to be faithful to all of God's truth, and yet not every seat or pew is filled, I want you to remember that Jesus knows what that's like, that success in his eyes is measured in very different ways. So be faithful, follow Jesus, preach all the truth, and love people like Jesus did. And whether 1 or 1,000 or a crowd that can fill a stadium come, know that just like Jesus, you have done what is right in God's eyes. I hope you enjoyed all the truth packed into John chapter 6, and I hope you're ready for John chapter 7. Jesus has so many great things to teach us about life, about love, and about God. We'll see you next week.